So good morning to everyone joining us for this first Planning and Housing Committee meeting of the term. It's important that we acknowledge that we are on the unceded and never surrendered territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation, whose culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. Il est important de souligner que la ville d'Ottawa se trouve sur un territoire non cédé de la nation algonquin Anishinaabe, dont la culture et la présence sont enrichies et continuent d'enrichir ces terres. I know that many of you, members, staff, and stakeholders are participating or watching electronically, but it is also good to see many of you here in person for our first hybrid meeting. I'm looking forward to the engagement possibilities that hybrid meetings are going to provide over the next 4 years, and my thanks go to the staff who have worked so hard to make this happen. If I may offer just a couple of remarks, everyone will have taken note that this committee is now the Planning and Housing Committee, with a refreshed mandate to focus on the creation of housing, and particularly affordable housing. The last council recognized that the lack of affordable and supportive housing has reached crisis proportions. Our council has the opportunity to make real progress, recognizing that the province has taken actions that make that both easier and more difficult, depending on the issue, a particular development, and a neighborhood's perspective. One of our biggest jobs this term is a new comprehensive zoning bylaw. Nous apprendrons davantage à ce sujet aujourd'hui et mon engagement et ma demande sont la collaboration de tous pour s'assurer que cela se fait d'une manière opportune et répond non seulement à l'orientation de la province, mais pour atteindre les objectifs de notre plan officiel en ce qui concerne la viabilité économique et environnementale. We'll need to work not just on behalf of our own communities, but on behalf of all communities in Ottawa. Provincial direction, however, does not mean that anything goes. Throughout this term, we're going to be asked to approve policies and development applications that will either contribute to great quality of life in Ottawa or to its diminishment. Notre personnel est prêt à nous offrir ses conseils avisés, mais notre travail consiste à fournir, au nom des résidents, une surveillance indépendante à cet égard. Les membres seront invités à lutter avec un très grand nombre de documents. Et je vous remercie en avance, à l'avance pour le travail que vous ferez faire pour être prêt à apporter votre vote éclairé et indépendant sur les questions dont nous sommes saisis. I'm looking forward to some great debates focused on policy and evidence. My door is open to everyone in order to help facilitate that. So let's get underway. I'll ask the committee coordinator to do the roll call.
Councillor Brockington.
Here.
Councillor Curry. Here. Councillor Dudas.
Present.
Councillor Johnson.
Here.
Councillor Kavanaugh.
Here.
Councillor Kelly.
Present.
Councillor Kitts.
Here.
Councillor Lowe.
Here.
Councillor Tierney.
Here.
Councillor Troster.
Here.
Vice Chair Gower.
Here.
And Chair Leeper.
I'm here.
You have quorum, Chair.
Thank you very much. A quick statement with respect to the public hearing for OP and zoning items. This is a public meeting to consider the proposed comprehensive official plan and zoning bylaw amendments listed as items 5.1 to 5.7 on today's agenda. For the items just mentioned, only those who make oral submissions today or written submissions before the amendments are adopted may appeal the matter to the Ontario Land Tribunal. In addition, the applicant may appeal the matter to the Ontario Land Tribunal if council does not adopt an amendment within 90 days of receipt of the application for a zoning bylaw amendment and 120 days for an official plan amendment. To submit written comments on these amendments prior to their consideration by City Council on January 25th, please email or call the committee or council coordinator. First item is declarations of interest, of which I believe Councillor Johnson will be making one.
Thank you. Yes, I do. But I realize now the one that I had printed only had one of my 2 declarations. So we're just trying to find the most recent version sent by Caitlin last night. Sorry for the delay.
No, we can pause quickly for those. We'll pause quickly for those. Are you going to read those out? Yeah. We'll take a moment. Please proceed.
Okay, so I, Councillor Lane Johnson, declare a potential deemed indirect pecuniary interest on the following items on the Planning Committee agenda of January 18, 2023. Item 5.2, zoning bylaw amendment 139 and 143 Balsam Street and 20 Larch Street, as my father is an employee of Preston Hardware. And item 5.4, zoning bylaw amendment 535 Chapel Street, as my spouse has a financial relationship with the owner of the property.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. So during consideration of those items, we'll ask Councillor. Information and minutes are the minutes of Thursday, October 27th, 2022 confirmed. We'll go through and see which items are going to carry on consent. The first item from the Office of the City Clerk is the Planning and Housing Committee terms of reference. I believe the councillors have questions for that, so I believe we'll hold it. We also have a technical motion on that as well, which we'll consider as we deal with that one. With respect to the zoning bylaw amendment at 75 Granton Avenue, there are no resident delegations today. On behalf of the applicant, former planning chair, Peter Hume is here. Good to see you, Peter. If the committee is prepared to carry this, do you need to speak to the item? Is this carried by the committee? Carried? Thank you. We have the item at 139 and 143 Balsam Street and 20 Larch Street. We're going to hold that because I believe that there will be some debate on that item, and there are also delegations. Councillor Johnson, we are about to so we'll come back to that one. With respect to the parking lot at 154 O'Connor Street, there is no presentation, no delegations, and no correspondence, with the exception of the applicants who I believe are here. If the committee is prepared to carry this, do the applicants want to address it? Is the committee prepared to carry this item? Carried. Thank you. At 535 Chapel Street in Rideau Vanier, I think we can deal fairly quickly. Oh, sorry. So this is an item on which Councillor Johnson is conflicted. We're going to address a motion right now. So could I ask you to leave your seat, please? On the Chapel Street item, we do have a motion to defer this item, which I'm going to ask Vice Chair Gower to address now.
Whereas discrepancies in the survey drawings from the applicant have been identified, and whereas revisions to the requested zoning relief are now required, and whereas the applicant has requested to defer the item to the January 31st, 2022 regular meeting of Planning and Housing Committee, and whereas staff support this request, therefore be it resolved that the Planning and Housing Committee approve the following. Defer the report to the January 31st, 2022 meeting of the Planning and Housing Committee, and 2, permit staff to include a revised staff report and document 2 proposed zoning bylaw amendment for inclusion in the distribution of the January 31st, 2022 Planning and Housing Committee agenda, with notice being provided.
I know we have the applicants here signed up to speak. My understanding is that you concur with the motion. So do you need to speak to this item if the committee is prepared to carry it? Thank you. So they've indicated they don't. Is the deferral motion carried?
Carried.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed Councillor Lowe. Councillor Lowe, questions?
Yeah, just a question about the motion. By chance, is it supposed to be 2023?
Sorry, I didn't catch the question.
Is the motion supposed to say 2023 in the two instances where it says 2022 right now?
So yes, it should say 2023, and the clerk is going to make that adjustment before we carry it.
Thanks, Tim.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Wilson, or thanks, Councillor Lowe. With that friendly amendment, is committee prepared to carry the deferral motion? Carried. Thank you. Councillor Johnson, we've finished that item. The voice carries. So the next item on the agenda is 1399 Avenue U in Alta Vista Ward. I know the applicants are here from CLV. If the committee is prepared to carry the item, do you need to address it? Or the applicants may not be here. Are they online? No. So we don't have any delegations on this. Is the committee prepared to carry it? Carried?
Carried.
Oh, they've just joined. I'm going to give them a moment just to come on board to give some indication as to whether they need to address the item or not.
No need to address the item.
Pardon?
No need to.
Thank you. So the applicant has said they don't need to address it. So is the item carried? Thank you. The item on Lancaster Road, there is a public delegation who wishes to speak. Mr. Woolsey, are you here? He's online, so we're going to hold that item. The item at St. Joseph Boulevard, is Councillor Luloff online? Nope. At 3459 and 3479 St. Joseph Boulevard, on behalf of the applicants, their consultants are here. If committee is prepared to carry this item, do you need to speak to it? Or the applicants may not be here. There. Okay, sorry. We have a queue in the Zoom call. Team those folks up.
Sorry for the delay. No, we have nothing to speak to it.
Thank you very much. So is the committee prepared to carry this item? Thank you. So going back to the items that were held. The first item, I know we have a motion on the terms of reference. So this is with respect to Planning and Housing Committee terms of reference. And I'll ask Councillor Gower to make that, put that technical motion out now.
Okay, whereas the Infrastructure and Water Services Department will report to Planning and Housing Committee on certain matters related to the committee's mandate, including but not limited to matters that pertain to infrastructure planning. And whereas the Infrastructure and Water Services Department was inadvertently omitted from the revised terms of reference, and whereas a correction is also required to correct a typo and provide additional clarity in the final paragraph of the terms of reference pertaining to the authority of the Built Heritage Committee. Therefore, be it resolved that the following subsection C be added under section 1 general responsibilities and the remaining subsection be renumbered accordingly. Application services and branches within the Infrastructure and Water Services Department. And be it further resolved that the final paragraph of the terms of reference be revised to read as follows. I won't read this out, but it is on the screen. And be it further resolved that the committee coordinator be directed to make these corrections in document 1 when the report is submitted to council.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair. So on the terms of reference, are there any questions of staff with respect to the terms of reference? Councillor Lowe?
Thank you, Chair. I know we received some concerns from some organizations and people over the agenda being circulated 10 days before the meeting, and planning meeting on Wednesdays means that sometimes this would fall on a Sunday, thereby possibly pushing it to a Monday. I know that staff did send an email out possibly clarifying this, but are you able to clarify this, I guess, for the record?
Mr. Chair, if Mr. Harwire wishes to further clarify, I'm happy to let him do so, but I can confirm that the Office of the City Clerk will release the agenda on the preceding business day. So with Planning Committee regularly falling on Wednesdays and the 10 business days falling on a Sunday, it would be Friday afternoon that the agenda would be released.
Did you have anything to add, Mr. Harvard?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Nothing really to add, just that the way the committee date falls now, it's actually an increase in the number of days from the previous term of council.
Councillor Lowe, is that satisfactory?
It's good. Thank you.
Yes, and that's, I think we'll be providing people with more time, so I'm satisfied with that as well. And we have that commitment now on the public record from planning staff. So are there any other questions with respect to the terms of reference? Councillor Brockington.
Thanks, Chair, and just want to acknowledge your as the new chair, so good luck to you and congratulations. My question is just for clarification to the deputy clerk, whether that practice will be not just for the Planning and Housing Committee, but all committees.
Yes, Mr. Chair, when the regular agenda delivery date for a committee or council falls on a weekend or statutory holiday, the agenda is released the preceding business day.
Very good. Thank you. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Brockington. I don't see any further questions. Is committee prepared to carry this item? Thank you very much.
Carried.
Our next item is with respect to the zoning.
Just if I may, I don't think we.
Oh,
actually
I'm sorry.
carried the technical amendment.
Yeah,
Which is- yeah.
first, so it's the technical amendment that was moved by Councillor Gower, carried as well. Carried, and so the modified terms of reference are carried. So the next item that we've held is the zoning item at 139 and 143 Balsam Street and 20 Larch Street, an item on which Councillor Johnson has declared an interest. So we'll ask Councillor Johnson to leave the room. So for this item, I've asked for a presentation from staff, and I'll let you folks get teed up with that.
Okay. Thank you very much. My name is John Burney. I'm with the Planning, Real Estate and Economic Development Department. And I've been asked to present today the temporary use bylaw amendment for 139 and 143 Balsam Street, as well as 20 Larch Street. Next slide, please. So the site is located in Little Italy, northwest of the Gladstone Avenue and Preston Street intersection. Next slide. The property is shown here in purple. It is a through lot between Balsam and Larch Street at the termination of both of these streets. It is located immediately north of Preston Hardware and east of the Gladstone Village development lands. There's also low-rise residential buildings located north and east of the site. Also note that Preston Hardware does own the subject property along with the adjacent properties that you see here to the east, which is an important point that I'll get into later in the presentation. Next slide. Okay, so any typical development on this site would be subject to the above policies. And you'll actually note in my report provided to committee that I reference a lot of policies that in fact discourage a parking lot use. For instance, the official plan envisions a downtown core that is not auto-dependent and encourages us to progressively reduce the prevalence of surface parking areas. However, it's important to note that temporary zoning amendments are viewed somewhat differently under the Planning Act, which I can expand on a little bit. A temporary rezoning is an option given to landowners and municipalities through the Planning Act and is further detailed in our official plan. These exceptions are limited to up to 3 years from the time of approval and are not required to conform with the current policies, primarily because of the condition proposed will be temporary and does not represent the sort of final form of the property. However, in the case of a temporary parking lot, we do ensure that parking lot dimensions meet the zoning bylaw requirements. And this is mainly for functional and safety reasons. So the parking spaces and drive aisle widths will be zoning compliant, and we do have a site plan to support that. When assessing the appropriateness of a temporary rezoning, we are looking to ensure that the proposal does not conflict with long-term objectives, that it is understood to be temporary and that the city is not obligated to extend the use, and that there is a future plan or they are moving towards or in a direction that is a better site condition. Next slide, please. So this is the site plan that I had mentioned. This is provided in support of the application and includes a single access to 21 parking spaces, including one accessible parking space on the bottom right. Two-way drive aisle is included along with landscaping and fencing to protect the properties to the north from any sort of light spillage from the vehicles of the parking lot. Next slide, please. So as mentioned, we like to see that the owner has provided a future plan for the site and that the parking lot will not become a permanent installation. This image displayed here is the owner's planned vision for the site. It's a conceptual drawing looking northwest and shows how it might fit in with the Gladstone Village development. Next slide, please. And here's another view provided looking southeast. The city has been aware of these plans for some time, and the owner and the applicant has been proactive in consulting with the community on at least one occasion. However, we presently do not have a formal application for what you see here. Next slide, please. And this is just a summary of the zoning that they are seeking. So it's a parking lot use for a term of 3 years and a reduction in the landscape width on Larch Street, the Larch Street frontage from 3 meters as required to 0 meters. And again, they have a fence along that perimeter. And a reduction in landscape width on Balsam from 3 meters required to 1.5 meters. And they do have landscaping shown on the site plan in that area. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the presentation. We do have delegations. It's my intention to stay with the past practice of asking the applicant to make their presentation to us. And then committee members will have an opportunity to pose questions of the applicant. Then we'll hear from, I believe we have a public delegation. Is Ms. Boucher here? She's not on the call yet. Okay, so we may or may not have a public delegation with the opportunity to pose questions. And then once, oh, she's in the audience. Fantastic. Sorry, Catherine. So once we've had an opportunity to pose questions of Catherine, we will then move on to questions of staff. If you do have motions that you intend to bring over the course of this debate, please try to provide those to the clerk in written form at your earliest opportunity to ensure that things move smoothly. So with that, Mr. Moser and your client, I would ask you to take a seat. There is a seat that is reserved for public delegations. And with that, I think you're very familiar. We have the rule of 5 minutes of presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. Good morning. My name is John Moser, and I'm representing Preston Hardware today with respect to this application. Mr. Mario Giannetti, the president of Preston Hardware, is with me to speak on this matter as well. And Chair will keep within the 5 minutes for total of our presentation. We are both here to support the staff report and to respectfully request that committee approve its recommendations. When the original approvals were provided in 2020 through demolition control to demolish the buildings on the subject site, there were 2 small residential buildings and a relatively small industrial building Preston Harbor had no intention to use the property for parking. The focus was on the redevelopment of the entire property between Balsam and Larch Streets owned by Preston Harbor into a 6-story mixed-use building. As John Bernier mentioned, staff has reviewed the redevelopment with the former ward councillor, with planning staff, and with the Dalhousie Community Association earlier in 2022. The proposal is consistent with the policies of the Corso Italia Station secondary plan that was approved by council in fall of 2021. The end goal remains the same, to redevelop the entire site. However, since 2020, the world has changed. Preston Harbor has not been able, nor did they want to obtain vacant possession of the properties. And the current economic situation worldwide has really been not conducive to undertake the project today. In the fall of 2022, an event occurred that impacted the operations of Preston Hardware. They had to vacate nearby staff vehicle parking because of a change of use of the property where they were parking. Basically, a nighttime use changed to a daytime use, and there was no ability to share parking. To deal with this unforeseen event, Preston Hardware applied for the 3-year temporary approval to permit 21 parking spaces. They're not customer parking, which means once the vehicles are in the lot, they stay until the end of the shift. Entrance and exit, as was mentioned, is off Balsam. No access available to Larch, which is primarily a residential street. Use of this lot by staff also means that vehicles are not being parked on adjacent streets within the neighborhood. So in conclusion, Preston Hardware is committed to the redevelopment of the larger site. The parking lot is an interim use for up to 3 years, time within which to continue moving this project forward. So with that, Chair, I'm going to ask Mr. Giannetti if he wants to say a few words, but we certainly would be pleased to answer any questions that the committee has.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for listening to us. We've been on Preston Street since 1945, and we'd like to stay on Preston Street for now and future. Our children are taking over the G2 generation of our business, and due to COVID, a lot of things have happened in our industry, and therefore, some of the plans that we have in place, we just had to slow down a bit because I said, just as a report we read by John a few minutes ago, so we had to make some changes. Hopefully that we will commit from now, the 3 years down to get the project on the go. Just that COVID has done a lot of negative things to today's businesses on a plural basis, and we got caught in between. So therefore, I'm asking to just give us this temporary parking, and I know that within 3 years, we'll have a new project that looks much better. We'll have some apartments, medium pricing type of thing, and we'll have some underground parking to alleviate a lot of the pressure that we have in our area right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much to you both. So I'm sure that members of the committee have questions. If I can just take this quick opportunity to say, it is my intent. We are all committee members. We're all planning committee members here today. Members who are not members of the planning committee are invited at any time to come join, participate as if they were members, but without the ability to vote. And it is my intent to make it a first to raise your hand is the first to ask a question practice, dispensing with some of the members of the committee get to ask their questions first. So just a quick opportunity to note that change in practice. And Councillor Troster.
Hello. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Moser, Mr. Giannetti. I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Ariel Troster. I'm the new city councillor for Somerset Ward. I live not far from Preston Hardware. My family are big fans of your store. We recognize that you're a really important business in our neighborhood. So thank you for joining us today. I do have some concerns though. Have you explored other potential parking solutions for your staff? There is a city lot that's only a few blocks away. And really good bus access to that location too.
We are trying right now, we're negotiating with the St. Anthony's Banquet Hall. Hopefully that will come across in the next few months after the winter, they've told us. So we are exploring, we have some of our members parking at the Satco building on Preston Street. So we are definitely looking other ways that we can do this.
Okay, just another question. I know that when the demolition application was approved in 2020, it explicitly forbade the use of the site for parking. Has it been used as parking in the interim?
Sorry, just say that last part, what you said, sorry.
The demolition permit
Yeah.
that was approved in 2020 was very explicit that the site was not used to be used as temporary parking. Has it been used as parking between the time of demolition and today?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Troster. And just a quick reminder, committee works a little differently from council. If you want to go back on the speakers list, you have the opportunity to keep going back. Next, Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, gentlemen, for your presentation. I'm just to start off seeking some basic information just to make sure I understand everything correctly. So my understanding is, according to the staff report, that the site in question hosts approximately 21 vehicles. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so not too big. And it has currently been used for parking, but the plan is that you're seeking an exemption or an extension up to 3 years. And I take it it's your plan to find and secure parking for employees during that tenure. And there will be a plan for this land coming to planning committee at some point to use the land for something other than parking. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. That's it.
Thank you, Councillor Dudas.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for providing some of those answers. I had a couple of additional questions. So what if committee decides to not approve this temporary use? What is the next step for you? You already have a conceptual design. You had indicated that, and it is very clearly that the pandemic has hit our businesses very hard. And it's not easy to find money to do some projects that businesses had anticipated they'd be able to undertake previously. So taking that into account, what happens if committee does not approve this extension today in terms of that property and where you go from there?
That's an excellent question. We would have to find other places at the present time, as we are already working towards finding other places. We're having a staff problem that it's hard to get. So therefore, we got to bring people outside the city to come to work that are willing to work. So we have other issues, since what will it do? I mean, chances are down the road, we may have to relocate or close down.
So what happens to that piece of land though, in terms of that parking lot space? If you're not permitted to have employees parking on, and I appreciate Councillor Troster's question before, apparently you have been using it already for parking, although that was not permissible use. So what happens to that piece of land, that parking, if you're not permitted to use it going forward for the next?
Well, we
couple of
will
years?
definitely redevelop the project itself. We are not going to leave the land empty, and we will put some commercial as a concept of the drawing we showed by Barry Hovens apartments and so on. We will carry on forward with the project.
So that's good to hear, because one of the things that, is kind of a difficulty for, I think, committee and then council is that we desperately need housing. We need affordable housing, but we need housing, particularly close to transit-oriented development. And to have temporary parking, even for a 3-year term, it's difficult to say to anyone, businesses, private owners, that that's permissible when we know that there's opportunities to have that land redeveloped. So I guess what I'm trying to ask is, the 3 years, it might seem like a small period of time, or it might seem like a long period of time. Do you need 3 years? Do you have a concept? If we were to extend it by a lesser amount of time, and there's past precedent for that, could you get something underway with the city, working with planning staff, to get this redeveloped to provide housing?
Well, it took us almost 18 months to have the 2 homes, people vacated and us tearing it down. So as you said, we do need housing and we understand that. And whatever we're going to put down, we're going to put up more. However, the issue that we see is that some of our tenants there will take us a long time for them to relocate.
Okay.
This is why I'm asked for the 3 years.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dudas. Councillor Kelly?
Yeah, when exactly were the previous buildings demolished?
I believe it's 2020 September.
And you're asking for a 3-year starting now?
Yes.
So essentially you're asking for 6 years on an empty lot.
Well, not 6 years, I don't think. I mean, it's only 2 years as of September now.
So 5 or 6 years.
Well,
Yeah. And you said you're looking at other options in terms of finding parking for your staff. So can you explain some of those other options and what you're doing to secure those? And then if those options are secured, if you find a viable option, would you then look to develop this property sooner?
Yeah, we already have a commitment with Barry Hovan drawings. I mean, we sort of sent it to the city already. We would move it forward if we find adequate space for our services. Yes.
And then your colleague, sorry, I don't remember your name. My apologies. You said that the 3 years would give you enough time to move the project forward. What does that mean to you? If this was approved today, where do you anticipate being in 3 years' time?
I think we have to make sure that we have the right type of apartments between low pricing and some high. Right now, it's just a conceptual. It fits the land and the use of what we want to do it. It just all depends how long it'll take us to tear down the homes and vacate the existing people.
Do you have a goal in terms of a date or a timeline for when you'd like to actually submit an application?
I'm going to say to you as soon as possible.
Okay, and if it is approved and you do go ahead with construction a couple years from now, where would your employees be parking during construction?
Again, we'd have
Because
to
obviously
find-
that site wouldn't be, you wouldn't be able to park there during construction. That would likely take years to complete.
I would hope that the LRT behind us will be running, that they could use that, some of them, because some of them do come outside the city. It's a fair drive for some of them that are working for us. Hopefully that we see a positive thing down the road.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Curry?
Thank you. Thank you for explaining all that you're explaining here today. I think this committee will struggle with the fact that not that long ago, we had another application similar, asking for a temporary parking permit. And the situation there was that this was yet again another extension. And, the challenge that the group had that wanted to build something there was that they couldn't get enough money, interest rates, COVID, like there was always a reason, why it never happened. And so I think this committee, and I can't speak for everybody, but certainly for me, that I feel like I don't want to see that again. We don't want to have temporary parking lots. So we say yes here today. I think people want a guarantee. And I understand it's difficult to give a guarantee, but a conceptual drawing doesn't seem far enough down the road. You know, I think if there were more milestones or sort of, you know, by this date, you'll have an application in. By this date, like, you know, I don't know that we understand you have a contractor to build that building. Building an apartment building takes a long time. And right now I'm hearing in Canada that some of the applications we approved not that long ago are now on hold because of interest rates, right? So builders are saying, thanks for that approval, but now we're not even going to build. So I wouldn't want to see that happen to you, you know, and I want you to know that we care about affordable housing. We also care about small businesses, and we are happy that people like you want to try to build more housing and have plans and projects. But it's hard for us when we see precedent set where people get a temporary parking permit and then they don't do anything with it. And then we're always in the position where we have to extend it. So I guess what I'm asking for, is there any maybe in this motion or any understanding that there would be milestones that would have to be met for it to be approved for another year or another year? Has that ever been done, or is that a possibility, or do you even see that being possible for you?
Well, unless we get the committee to give us a site plan subdivision this year type of thing, possibility we could do that.
So you would submit a site plan this year?
If I have the time, the answer is yes. If we have enough.
Yeah, it's that if, you know, it's
well,
that if always, right? There's a lot of ifs in
I
life.
like to put a guarantee with my name on it, but sometimes I can't see the future ourselves.
Yeah, no, I honestly appreciate the challenge here. I don't know if staff have any thoughts, and maybe that this is not the time to ask staff a question, but I would like to understand how many, you know, sort of guarantees could be put around this to make sure that housing is built there, you know?
Thank you, Councillor Curry. And, you know, certainly it is within our purview to do a period of exemption that is shorter by way of motion. So if a member wanted to put forward a motion to say, we'll consider this and see where you are a year from now, you know, come back to us and seek our permission if you need to go longer than 1 year or 2 years. So that would be a possibility for this committee to do today. Does anyone want to have any further questions for the applicant before we let them go? No, seeing none. In that case, thank you very much for your delegation. And with that, I'll ask staff to, or I'll ask Catherine, Ms. Boucher, to prepare.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, Ms. Boucher. I think you know the 5-minute rule. I look forward to hearing your delegation.
Also known as the Alex Cullen rule, I remember. I'm honored to be the first public presenter at this august meeting of the Planning Committee of the new council. I hope I'm not here too often, but it's always good to be here. And you do a great job. It's the best and most important committee, as you well know. My name is Catherine Boucher. I am representing the Dalhousie Community Association, which covers the west portion of Somerset Ward and is known as Little Italy, Chinatown, and LeBreton Flats. Our neighborhood is undergoing rapid growth and redevelopment, as it should be. We are home to Ottawa's current tallest building, the Icon at 45 stories, soon to be outdone, I'm sure. Our planning group is kept very busy working with developers and city staff to make ours a sustainable and welcoming place to live. We participated in the recently approved Corso Italia secondary plan, which includes the area in this proposal. It clearly states in section 5.113 that the plan is to, and I quote, prohibit new surface parking across the district. The proponent received a demolition permit for 2 houses on this lot, as it was their intention to redevelop the site with a mixed-use building, which you've seen some draft plans of. The permit was granted exceptionally since there was not an approved site plan as is normally required. The agreement clearly stated, and I'm quoting again, that until the time of the construction of the first replacement building, other than where the sales center and any associated parking are provided, the registered owner shall landscape the property and provide fencing along the entire perimeter to the satisfaction of the general manager of planning. The registered owner shall prohibit the use of the property for other interim uses and maintain the property in accordance with property standards bylaw. This was the condition for receiving a demolition approval for two residential houses, 139 and 143 Balsam. Temporary, and here I'm quoting air quotes because the temporariness which the councillor alluded to has plagued the downtown. It's a scourge and has been a scourge of the downtown for decades. We are still walking around the downtown seeing temporary parking lots that come back here every 3 years to get their temporary permit renewed. Using this extremely valuable land for surface parking goes against all we know about livable cities. This site could not be better served by transit. 4 buses go by within a 30-second to 3-minute walk. That's for Councillor Lowe, the 2, the 85, the 14, and the 11. I took the 14 here this morning. Preston Hardware abuts the Corso Italia LRT stop on the Trillium line. It will be right at the bottom of the building, essentially. So we're looking forward to the redevelopment of the site. We're happy to see a mixed-use residential site going on this property, and we've met with the proponents to give our comments already. But in the meantime, we ask that you refuse this application, and we thank you for your consideration of that today. Merci.
Thank you very much, Ms. Boucher. I don't see any questions for Ms. Boucher from members. No? In that case, I'll thank you very much for coming out today.
Thank you for your time.
So now is a great time to ask your questions of city staff. And first up, we have Councillor Tierney.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. We've gone through this before on other applications. We remember the church situation in the past. I guess my question is, and I'll listen to my colleagues' discussion and debate on this. There's opportunities to reduce the amount of time from 3 years to 2 to 1, but what about, can we make it so it's hard, whatever timeline we select, that we can never extend past it legally?
Mr. Herwire, are you going to take that?
Sure. Thanks, Chair. I will start, and Ms. Enta may wish to add. So certainly the 3 years is a maximum time period. It's within council's purview to specify a lesser period of time. So any period of time up to 3 years would be permitted by the Planning Act.
So, but again, let's say we pick 2 years, we pick 3 years, or if we just take this specific motion and say the applicant, the landowner can never come back and look for an extension, are we legally able to do that?
No, the applicant can reapply for a further extension. It's certainly within council's purview to deny the extension, but they have the right to apply.
Okay. Well, I know my colleagues will have some questions around this, and I'll listen to the further debate. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Gower, or Vice Chair Gower?
Thanks, Chair. The demolition permit that was issued 3 years ago included a prohibition on parking. Is that a typical condition of demolition permits, or was there a special circumstance here?
Chair, it is a standard condition. We are looking for them to not park on the site, and often we ask for landscape improvements and fencing along the perimeter of the site to prevent this from occurring as well.
And why do we have that as a city policy, that this is for any demolition control that we prohibit parking? Why do we have that? What's the objective of that exemption?
Often it's because, we haven't reviewed the parking configuration that would occur on the site. As I said in my presentation, we look at things like the drive aisle widths are appropriate, as well as that the parking spaces are properly dimensioned. And not only that is, we would like to not compromise the future vision for that site or area.
In this general area, in this Preston Street area, I think one of the questions about, could this end up being a long-term parking lot? Because that's not what we want. I think sometimes it's reasonable for applicants to come through and seek a temporary exemption in exceptional circumstances. My concern is about what happens when this becomes a long-term parking lot. Right now in the Preston Street area, does the city have any data about availability of parking, about is there a large demand for parking that's unmet right now? I guess I'm looking for what the possibility is that this would be a viable use for the current owner or future owner to keep as a parking lot for quite a long time, and how big of a concern might that be for us as a committee when we're making this decision?
Right, we do have a unit that looks at area parking counts. Unfortunately, that's not something that I explored. I was more or less looking at the applicant's need for parking. And it is, they've been struggling for parking for some time. So I trust that it is an absolute need from them, at least.
For the owner's current business use, the hardware store, is there a minimum parking requirement that they have to operate?
Yes, there would be.
And do they have that right now with any of their existing parking, or would they be in non-conformance of any bylaw without having the minimum parking requirement?
I haven't looked at their site requirements. Sorry.
Okay. Is there anyone else on planning staff or legal that could comment on that?
Mr. Chair, parking requirements are can be met through a number of different ways. And in the past, as I think the applicant has outlined, they had a previous arrangement with another landowner. And while I'm not in a position at this point in time to speak to their specific requirements for minimum parking on the other site, there is opportunities to achieve that minimum parking through long-term agreements. The other thing that if I may add, Mr. Chair, the question around the commercial viability or the likelihood that this is going to maintain as a long-term parking, I do think it's worth noting that it's not a commercial parking lot, it's parking for staff. And so it is supporting that business use. Whereas, one of the concerns about, demolishing sites downtown for a commercial parking lot is the commercial viability, and that some of those commercial parking lots can be quite lucrative and actually provide that disincentive that we're trying to avoid to development.
So the language in the details in document 4 reflects specifically that it cannot be used for any use other than employee parking of Preston Hardware. Is that explicitly clear? And if it's not, it might be something we need to look at between now and council.
Chair, it does not specify. It's simply for parking lot use.
Okay. Yeah, probably not something we can resolve in the middle of committee, but it is something I want to look at with planning staff and perhaps legal to make sure we're very explicit about what use, who can park in this parking lot, depending on what happens in the rest of our discussion today. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair Gower. And I would suggest that if that was something the committee wanted to see, and if there were a motion coming forward to cap the length of time that this could be used for parking, that it would be appropriate to accomplish that today. Councillor Troster?
Hi, thank you very much. First of all, I would just like to point out there is a City of Ottawa owned parking lot that's about 3 blocks away on Louisa Street with abundant parking. It would not be free for staff, but should they choose to drive, there is a large lot in the neighborhood. My question is, what policy levers does the city have if an applicant contradicts the explicit instructions in a demolition order? I'm concerned about grandfathering in a use of the property that was explicitly forbidden in 2020 when the original demolition approval was approved. So I'm interested, number one, in what can the city do in a situation where an individual specifically contradicts a demolition permit? And then the other question is, are you concerned about the fact that this property has been used as parking for the last 3 years, despite the very clear language in the demolition permit that it not be?
Chair, with respect to enforcement of agreements, I'll invite, the legal counsel to provide additional detail, but there, it does come to us to enforce breaches of those agreements through court or other means, and I'll ask Christine Enta to build on that response.
That's correct, Mr. Chair, and Mr. Chair, members of committee. My name is Christine Enta. I'm legal counsel. I sit as staff solicitor for a selection of committees, including this one when Mr. Mark is unavailable. With respect to the demolition agreement that is on title, there are enforcement provisions within that agreement. This is an executed agreement that outlines the obligations. It typically goes through planning staff, as Mr. Moody said, to determine whether or not compliance has occurred. If there is non-compliance, there is an inspection, and then the matter moves forward, and it can move forward in a variety of ways. But ultimately, we need to start with a determination of compliance or non-compliance under this present agreement and see what the obligations were at the time and where we are today.
Okay. Thank you very much. Just one follow-up question. So just to clarify, there's been no concrete timeline provided to city staff about when this development would begin construction or site plan application?
Chair, no, there is no timeline established. Just the conceptual drawings and the site plan that we've received through this application. But yeah, we're not sure when they intend on developing.
Okay. And just one question of clarification. What does the Corso Italia secondary plan say about surface parking in general?
As detailed in my report, Chair, it's expressly prohibited in this area. But as I mentioned, it's for temporary use, it does not need to conform with the present policies, aside from the zoning bylaw as it relates to the parking lot specifications.
Okay, well, if I could just speak to this, I'll say that I had an opportunity to meet the folks who live in the homes on the streets surrounding the hardware store this summer during the campaign. A lot of these homes, the ones that are due to be demolished in the future, they're low-income people that live in those homes. The ones that I met are on Ontario Works or disability. And I'm quite sure that when those homes are demolished, it will be impossible to find housing of that size in that central location at that price point. I support greater density in the neighborhood. I am a big fan of Preston Hardware as a local business. I'm very, very concerned about the fact that homes where middle and low income people live in the neighborhood were demolished, that the site was used as illegal surface parking for 3 years. And I'm concerned about grandfathering in that illegal use. I don't think it's a good precedent. And as my colleagues have said here around the table, we need housing downtown. We need it quicker. The Ontario government passed legislation called More Homes Built Faster. So I would only be interested in granting an extension to this use as parking if there is a very, very concrete timeline for development, because we're not seeing any timeline here. And I would be willing to consider a much shorter timeline with some very specific provisions that the applicant comes back and lets us know what the plan is for the site. I'm also very concerned that, slowly as the other homes are taken down and construction staging begins, does that mean that we're going to have more temporary parking just one lot over? It's sort of a beast that is hard to handle. And as Catherine Boucher from the Community Association said, this is a real plague in downtown Ottawa. So I would encourage committee members for us to think very critically about this. Surface parking is contrary to the city's official plan, to the neighborhood's secondary plan, and to the climate emergency. And my understanding is that there was a similar application in River Ward, perhaps it was in the last term of council, Councillor Brockington, you can speak to it, where an application for temporary parking use was denied based on future rapid transit coming in 10 years. Well, Corso Italian Station will be open in 1 year to 18 months. There is really good bus access to that location. And as I said, there's a city lot just 3 blocks away. So I don't think the city should be in the business of providing private parking to businesses, to employees of businesses, when there really is abundant parking nearby. And our goal is to get as many cars off the road as possible. So with all due respect to the applicant, whose business I enormously respect, I have some serious concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Troster. Again, if anyone wants to let me know that they're considering making a motion, I'd love to know that. I do, before I move on to Councillor Curry, I just want to ask Ms. Enta to provide some precision around the building agreement.
Yes, Mr. Chair, there is a provision in the demolition agreement which has been executed by the owner that states that the owner acknowledges and agrees that a replacement building or buildings shall be substantially completed within 5 years from the date of this approval, being September 14th, 2025. And then there are default provisions that involve an amount to be collected and added to property tax if that replacement building has not occurred. So a date has been indicated within the demolition agreement, if that is helpful, Mr. Chair, to the committee.
Thank you very much, Ms. Enta. I have Councillor Curry next.
That's super helpful. Thank you for that. You know, when these decisions are made by planning staff, do you have the ability to put something in to that saying, you know, you had by 2025 to get a building up here. So we say in the next year, you need to have a site plan and we'll allow this. So your recommendation here is 3 years, you know, but did you have the ability to give us sort of more of a detailed what you would have recommended? Or is it always left up to councillors to come up with a different version?
Chair, staff's recommendation are based on review of the policies and the policy framework that we work within. You know, ultimately, you know, the 3-year recommendation that's before you is, you know, it is staff's recommendation. You know, we don't make recommendations typically in hope that council will come up with something different. If that answers the question, Chair, I apologize, Councillor. Yeah, I appreciate there's been some discussion around today and the will of committee around what they're looking to achieve. But the staff recommendation is as is before you for three years today.
Okay, I just want to know if maybe you weren't allowed to do that. Like, you know, you have to just give the actual 3-year, that's it. You can't be creative and say, we would say that you could try something different. You could have done that, but you just normally don't do that.
The development process relies on a lot of creativity as we go through applications. We are allowed to come forward with a variety of different recommendations. You know, we could have come forward with a refusal. We could have come forward with the 3 years as we've done, or we could have come forward with any range of time between that. You know, that's what we're allowed to do, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I'm just thinking that if right now, I mean, this is middle of committee, usually these motions take longer for wording, and I'm not hearing that anybody has a motion ready. Does Laura, you have it for 2 years though? I mean, what, 1 year, and then would there be conditions to it?
I'm happy to read it.
Okay, I mean, that's something we will debate then, but I mean, I would like to see conditions, but you know, we're hearing that they had a condition to build a building by 2025 and that wasn't met. So my other comment would be, what would be, and we'll see what you have to say, Councillor Dudas, but what would be the follow-up to that? Because I don't think by 2025 there's going to be a building, so they're already in sort of contravention of a direction.
So it's an opportune time to go to Councillor Dudas.
I'm also next in line, so it's perfect. Yes, no, I've been listening to the conversation and, you know, knowing that the station is opening up in a year, also recognizing that the pressures, potentially financial pressures on the applicant might mean that even if we decline this application for an extension, they probably still can't build shovels in the ground starting tomorrow. So we're then left with a property that is derelict for however it takes for them to put an application forward and go through all the rigors of the development process. So what I am proposing, and I have shared this with staff and the local councillor as well as the chair, and I'm happy to further discuss it, is therefore be resolved that with respect to report document 4, section 2C1 be amended as follows. Non-accessory parking in a principal use parking lot is limited to a temporary period of 1 year, beginning on the date of passing of this bylaw, and therefore it be further resolved that there be no further notice pursuant to section 3417 of the Planning Act. And I wanted to stay in line with past precedent. This is wording that is based on the application that was before us for the Archdiocese, the one on St. Patrick with the temporary parking. And I thought that 1 year is ample time to find parking adjacent or nearby or encourage staff to take transit for this applicant. But it's also ample enough time to get city staff to work with them closely to get the application process underway. So that was the impetus for this motion.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dudas. So that amending motion is on the floor. I like it as an opportunity to give the developer or the applicant an opportunity to significantly advance their building plans on a shorter timeline. So we are debating the amending motion now. Councillor Kavanagh, you're next. Welcome to Planning and Housing Committee. And I assume that you'll want to address the amending motion.
Yeah, now that that's up, my question is also, when we give permission for parking, it doesn't specify that it's staff parking. Can they make a profit on the parking? Because that is my concern, because that is an incentive, of course, to keep the parking longer. And I haven't heard if that can be distinguished or it's just parking. And as was mentioned by Mr. Moody, it can be very lucrative. So it's an incentive to have parking. That's my concern.
So, Mr. Chair, if I may, I think Vice Chair Gower had a good suggestion that perhaps direction to staff to look at tightening up that language to the extent we legally can to specify employee parking versus a commercial parking lot. We would be prepared to explore that between now and council.
Yeah, and by the way, I'm not encouraging the use of surface parking by any means, but I am aware that I had a lot in my area that ended up doing parking, and it was for D&D employees, and they were making money on it. So it's now not needed anymore because they're all working from home. But that's what happened. So I don't know if there was any distinguishment. But also, given we got the new information about what the conditions were when the demolition took place, to be built by 2025. Yeah, how does that work when it's clear that that's not going to happen? What are the penalties? What does it mean to have those kind of dates?
Mr. Chair, the penalty outlined in the demolition agreement from 2020 is that upon default of that provision for the replacement building, the city clerk shall enter onto the collector's roll the sum of $5,960 for each of the 2 residential dwelling units that were to be demolished. And the owner acknowledges covenants and agrees that the demolition permit will not be issued by the city and the building shall not be demolished until such time as the owner enters into this agreement, which they did, so it was executed. And that sum will be entered into on the collector's roll and can be collected in the same manner as property taxes.
Okay, thank you. I'm still listening, but again, I'm concerned about surface parking being, and we certainly want to limit it. And so I'd like to hear more about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. Before we lose that, Mr. Herwire, if this amending motion does pass, will you take it as direction to proceed as Councillor Gower has suggested and as you've outlined?
Yeah, subject to any concerns Ms. Enta has, I would say yes, we would, and we would look at strengthening that language.
Thank you. Councillor Brockington.
Chair, my suggestion would be the motion be further amended with the expectations of this committee. So if you don't want anything other than employee parking, the motion should state that. The motion does not state what our expectations are as far as providing a development plan or proposal, or at least evidence a year from now, should an application come back to extend, what are we expecting to have happened in the last year? I think I know, based on our conversations, we would like to see forward movement or progress on an application to get something built here, but that's not stated. And I think those expectations need to be crystal clear. I also want to say that we have to differentiate the Notre Dame Basilica application with this one. The church has had a temporary parking lot on site for 31 years. This is not Notre Dame. These are two different files that this committee and council has wrestled with. And I think where I can agree with my colleague from Somerset on the issue is the specific location of this property, its proximity to the brand new Trillium Line station that's going to open this year. The fact that we have policy that states this should not happen, I think are strong arguments. But the reason why I'm going to support the staff recommendation, possibly as amended, is because it is temporary in nature, that I do believe the owner, and I appreciate the owner coming here today. I want to speak directly to Mr. Giannetti because most owners do not come and present themselves before the committee. They hide behind their consultants. So I want to provide my appreciation in that regard. And I do believe that there's something going to be provided or built here on this site. So it's a bit of a balance act to know where we are in a housing and homelessness emergency. We all acknowledge this and we all want to see something built here. And I think we're frustrated that something hasn't happened sooner. And I think those are all fair comments. But I do believe that something will happen here. And I do believe the owner has heard from the committee today, because if another application comes forward this term of council, you have to face the same people. And we're going to have a more difficult conversation a year, 2 years, 3 years from now, if that should happen. So I'm going to support the staff recommendation. I will support an amendment because I do think that will help get this file moving sooner rather than later. But I wanted to point out, this is not the same as the Notre Dame file. They're two completely separate files. And I hope that whatever happens here today is really the best outcome possible. We give the owner temporary exemption for parking, which is what he's asking for, but perhaps we shorten the lifetime of that exemption for the hope that we get to see a planning file come before the planning department. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brockington. With respect to further amending the amending motion, I'm not sure that that's the best path to go down today, but we do have some time before City Council. Councillor Trosser, does anyone, you want to wrap up?
Sure. I just had one question that I'm happy
Okay.
to wrap up. Is
Please.
1 year a reasonable deadline to have a site plan application in for a development of this nature? So just a question to staff, what your reading of it is.
To submit an application, yes, Chair, it is.
So I can live with a year. I do trust the good intentions of the applicant. I can't support anything beyond a year for all the reasons that I've stated. And we do believe that the Corso Italia station will be up and running within a year. So I think that resolves the problem. I'm anxious to see this development come to life. It's really important for our neighborhood, and it's also adjacent to the very large Gladstone Lands development that will be happening very nearby. There'll be a lot of really interesting homes being built in this neighborhood. So I'm very comfortable with the amendment from Councillor Dudas. In an ideal world, I would like to see our expectation that a site plan be submitted at the end of 1 year, added to the amendment if my colleagues are amenable to that. And again, the goal is to get the housing built and to develop that part of the neighborhood because it's valuable land, it's an important community, and we really need those homes. Thank you.
I think I hit the mic cut off button there. It's going to take some while to get used to. Unless there is, is there any further questions, comments?
I just want to clarify, are we inserting language after Mr. Brockington's suggestion about some specifics on what we're expecting after 1 year?
No one has put that motion forward, but I think the staff have taken his direction to
That's
provide some
understood.
precision before council.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks. So with that, then I would like to put the amending motion from Councillor Dudas to a vote. Madam Clerk, could you call a vote on that, please?
Sorry,
Councillor Brockington?
sorry, Counselor Leeper, how do we amend the amending motion to add the requirement for a site plan application? Excuse my ignorance, this is my first planning and housing meeting.
And I'm sorry, what was that question?
How does one amend the amending motion to add a requirement for the submission of a site plan application within 1 year to this amendment?
So my suggestion would be that we can't force them to
Okay.
submit a site plan. What they have is the incentive, since if this amending motion passes, they have to come back to us in a year. We'll have the opportunity to determine before we give them any further exemptions, to have a conversation about, have they submitted a site plan? Are they making progress towards the achievement of this? Because they will need a continued exemption, while the project is being constructed and going through all of its development phases. So my own suggestion is that that's probably not necessary.
Okay.
I don't know if staff have any further nuance on that.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The chair is correct. We cannot add a condition to the zoning. Certainly the expectation is clear in terms of the 1 year time frame. So I think the minutes of the meeting reflect that. Will reflect that.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much, Chair. And thank you to the applicant. I look forward to seeing you in a year to see how this development is going. We are excited about it. Thank you so much.
So because there has been some discussion and debate of this motion, I am going to put it to a recorded vote, please, Madam Clerk.
Councillor Brockington?
This is on the amendment.
On the amendment,
In
on
favor,
the Councillor
yes.
Dudas motion.
Yes.
Councillor Curry?
Yes.
Councillor Dudas?
Yes.
Councillor Johnson? Oh. Councillor Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Councillor Kelly?
Yes.
Councillor Kitts?
Yes.
Councillor Lowe?
Yes.
Councillor Tierney?
Yes.
Councillor Troster?
Yes.
Vice Chair Gower?
Yes.
And Chair Leeper?
Yes. So as amended, does the staff recommendation carry? Thank you. Thank you very much. And I believe that we can ask Councillor Johnson to rejoin us with the item over. Bear with me for just a moment. It's like magic. I believe that is the substantial agenda. Oh, I'm sorry, it's not the substantial agenda. We still have the item on 2784 and 2786 Lancaster Road. Is Mr. Woolsey still in attendance?
Yes, Chair, he's still on the call.
Okay. So I am going to, do members of the committee want the full presentation? Do members of the committee want the full presentation on Lancaster? No, you're familiar with it. So with that, then I would ask, we'll go directly to delegations. And on that item first, the applicant. I'm not sure who's here on behalf of the applicant, but you have the opportunity to speak to the item. Jacob, okay. So we'll tee Jacob up.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. I did prepare a presentation, but I'm happy just to respond to questions if there are any.
Okay. Let's proceed that way. Do members of the committee have questions for Mr. Baldock on behalf of the applicants? See none. Let's move on to, thank you very much, Jacob. There are no questions for you. Let's move on to the next delegation, Mr. Woolsey, I believe. Mr. Woolsey, welcome to Planning and Housing Committee. You have 5 minutes to make a delegation to the committee, at which point members of the committee may ask you questions afterwards. Please.
Thank you, Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Les Woolsey. My wife and I have lived on Blackstone Crescent for the last 45 years. The back corner of our property touches the northwest corner of the property under discussion. I would like to address two concerns with this proposal. Firstly, there are many aspects of the report that relate to evaluation and recommendations by city staff on various parameters. After reading the report, I find myself having to call into question how diligent the efforts in these recommendations are. For me, the fact that they do not accurately describe the location and the current circumstances raise a red flag that the city has not performed proper due diligence in this matter. Looking first of all at the description of site surrounding on page 3, it reads, and I quote, "These buildings are located near the south side of the site, while open space exists to the north." This clearly is not true. There is no open space around this site. To the north is a very large commercial building that has been under construction for more than a year. The building envelope is complete. The site has been landscaped and paved. To describe this building as open space shows that the authors of the report have not looked at or considered it properly. Furthermore, in describing the current occupants, it says that building 1, includes a restaurant. Actually, according to the website, it's a shisha lounge, which is, for those who, like me, didn't know what that meant, is a type of hookah lounge, and from what I can tell, appears to be illegal in the city of Ottawa. So if staff can't get the description of building uses right, I have a hard time having confidence in the rest of the considerations that the properties that have been dealt with. Secondly, in the discussion section under official plan designations on page 4, the second paragraph states, policy 6.5.3 specifies that where mixed industrial areas interface with neighborhoods, certain land uses may be permitted in support of the objective of establishing 15-minute neighborhoods. I'd like to consider for a moment how this proposed change would contribute to a 15-minute neighborhood. If we consider the area defined by 15-minute walk from these locations, we quickly see that this is in the extreme corner of such an area. The land to the southeast of Walkley Road is open land. That area would obviously not be part of any neighborhood where people lived or worked. To the east is Sheffield Road, but due to railway rights of way, only a few buildings on Sheffield would be part of a 15-minute neighborhood. For measurement purposes, I've used rather than being arbitrary, I've used Google Maps walking times to find what would be the limits of a 15-minute walk and discovered that it doesn't even include all of the Sheffield Glen neighborhood, nor does it even capture much of the area southwest of Russell Road. In other words, it really does very little to contribute to a 15-minute neighborhood. If the city wants to create 15-minute neighborhoods, which is a laudable goal, it's a neat goal, there are other better, more accessible nearby vacant locations that are already zoned for retail spaces. Not to mention the Elmvale Shopping Center, which already acts as a central hub for a much larger 15-minute neighborhood. Also, this zoning application is perhaps a little unusual in that one of the units is already operating as a retail outlet. So we can look at their experience to better determine if this zoning change would encourage or enhance 15-minute neighborhoods. After speaking with the staff at the florist, I learned the following 4 points. Almost all of their sales come from the internet. Most of their sales are delivered. They have very few, quote, walk-up, unquote, customers. And fourthly, virtually all of the walk-up customers actually drive. No one walks to that location. From their description, we can conclude 2 things. That retail in this location is not contributing to retail neighborhoods. And secondly, that the florist store is operating more like a service than a retail operation. It's very similar to the Fastening House, Inc., which is located at 2676 Lancaster Road, and it's in the same zoning
Sorry to
area.
interrupt. Point of order, Mr. Chair.
On a point of order?
I would just, well, maybe it's not a point of order. I would like to acknowledge that there are no staff sitting at the table right now. I find that disrespectful to the.
I believe the city staffer is online, the city planner.
Correct, Chair. It's a manager of the development review area here. Yeah, we're listening and we're prepared to address the question from the man. Thank you.
Mr. Woolsey, I'm sorry, please continue on.
Okay, if I may, I'm just going to restart that last sub point. It's just a sentence. The florist store is operating more like a service than a retail operation, just like the Fastening House Inc., located at 2676 Lancaster Road and in the same zoning area as these 2 buildings currently are. In other words, it looks like the florist operation may already be compliant at their current location. The rationale, therefore, that is proposed for this zoning change zoning change somehow furthers the goal of creating 15-minute neighborhoods seems very unfounded in reality. So finally, I must indicate that I am opposed to this change. It has been poorly researched and very poor rationale for improving the area. I understand that the building owner would like to have these units occupied, but to change the zoning simply for his convenience and with very poor logical support does not seem in the best interest of the city nor the neighborhood near these buildings. Thank you.
Mr. Woolsey, thank you very much for the presentation. I'll give an opportunity to members to put up their hand to ask questions. And seeing none, I'll thank you very much for the delegation today.
Thank you for listening.
Members of the committee, are there any questions of city staff? Councillor Trosser?
Hi, so I just wanted to clarify, if I'm not mistaken, there was some concern about one of the proposed uses of this property is for a cannabis store. Am I correct?
That is correct. One of the uses that they want to install this at one of the units is a cannabis store.
Okay. I guess I'll just make the comment. I live in Centertown where there are 3 cannabis stores within walking distance of my house. I will say I have not noticed there being a concern with people hanging out and consuming cannabis in front of those stores. I think that, you know, I have my own criticism about the over proliferation of cannabis stores downtown, but I personally have not noticed people hanging out and consuming the product outside the store. To me, the In-N-Out strikes me as being very similar to the liquor stores that are near me. I'm just wondering if city staff, you know, based on other approvals of applications of this nature, do you have any data to suggest that the citizens' concerns that folks might be using the products near their properties is founded or not?
So under the city zoning bylaw, a cannabis store is defined as a retail store. We do have also a use called cannabis production facility, which is a completely separate use. I'm not aware of any special studies that were done, but under zoning, it is a retail store. I don't know if Lily would have additional information on a study that was prepared in the past.
Okay, and to
That's
be clear,
correct. Yeah.
Sorry.
And the chair, if I can add, just to add some clarification here. Cannabis store is not a land use defined under the zoning. The appropriate zoning definition is a retail store. So the fact that whether the applicant is adding 2 flower shops here or 2 cannabis stores here are the same thing for the purview of the zoning bylaw amendment review.
right, so we have no say over what goes in there. It's just a question of whether we allow commercial use.
That's some good precision. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Trosser. Councillor Lowe?
Thank you, Chair. My question's for staff. When it came to determining that this promotes 15-minute neighborhoods, what exactly was used to measure that? Was it just purely based on distance over time? No. Was it just purely based on the distance traveled and then the rate of speed at, you know, the average person walks, like what Google Maps says? Or was a more in-depth look taken to also factor in the psychological barriers that may exist in that area for people who might want to one day walk from, let's say, Blackstone Crescent to the retail location?
So to answer your question, the considerations in the report were not only based on the 15-minute neighborhoods. So the policies for the mixed industrial designation, they do permit what they call small scale service commercial uses, as long as these uses are located within, well, not within, but along the edge of the mixed industrial area. In this case, it is along the edge, and it has to also be abutting residential neighborhoods. And in this case, it is abutting residential neighborhoods to the rear. So in this case, it does fulfill both of the criterias that we have in the policies for the mixed industrial designation. And there is also a pathway located not too far north of this property that connects to the residential neighborhood to the back.
Are you referring to the pathway that's kind of in the north end of North Blackstone where it would connect to Southmore?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lowe. Councillor Carr.
Hi there. Obviously, I'm not a member of the planning committee, but I am the ward councillor for the area. I just had a question for staff. With respect to the comments in the delegation, and I probably should have asked this to the delegation. I just wanted to confirm, the delegation made a comment about not being a restaurant in the area presently. I think there actually is I don't think it's a shisha bar. I think it's the garden restaurant. But I just wanted to confirm, there already is retail in the building, that it's just not operating legally. Is that correct? Could we just clarify that point so I fully understand the application?
That is correct. So the flower store is a retail store, which therefore this zoning bylaw amendment would legalize that flower store. And in the past, there was also a vape store that is currently the vacant unit where the cannabis store wants to be. And that technically would have been in the past also not legal.
Okay, thank you. So the restaurant is still operational, the one that was next to the vape store, correct?
I believe
Do you
so.
know that? Okay, perfect. Thank you. I think.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carr. Are there any further questions of staff or any further comments? No. And again, there was some discussion of this one, so I'll just call for a quick recorded vote for the folks who are not here.
Councillor Brockington,
Yes.
Councillor Curry,
Yes.
Councillor Dudas,
Yes.
Councillor Johnson,
Yes.
Councillor Kelly,
Yes.
Councillor Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Councillor Kitts,
Yes.
Councillor Lowe,
Yes.
Councillor Tierney,
Yes.
Councillor Troster,
Yes.
Vice Chair Gower,
Yes.
and Chair Leeper.
Yes. Thank you
12
very much, committee
yeas.
members. That item carries. So with that, I believe now we're done with the substantive agenda. In-camera items, there are no in-camera items for this meeting. Information previously distributed. There is an item placed on the agenda that you've all seen, the cash in lieu of parkland balances. Feel free to reach out to staff if you have any questions with respect to those. My understanding is there are no notices of motion today. See none. Do we have any inquiries today? I see none. Other business, we have no other business. None's been received. Therefore, adjournment. Are we adjourned? Carried. Members, thank you very much. To the members of the public and staff and the applicants, thank you very much for your participation today. Have a good day.